My name is Brent. By the time I went to Brady, I lived in Stepney Green, which, although it's an area, is also the name of a road, directly opposite the London Jewish Hospital at the time. And I went to Brady around about 1962, when I would have been 13, 14. Stayed there until I was too old to be a member of the club, but continued as part of the old Bradians because I played football for many years after that for the club. My father had been a master tailor, but he had very poor eyesight, and he was told by his optician that with black thread on black material and white thread on white material was ruining his eyesight. So my parents decided that he had to give up that role, and they decided that the only option was to try and get some money together and, as was common at the time, buy a shop. I should also say that I had an older brother, who's now sadly passed away, who had muscular dystrophy from when he was a child. So that made things very awkward to actually get together the money. My mother went out to work again, and I was about 7 at the time. And by that time, my brother was at grammar school and was still able to walk and get on buses and trains, which, you know, it was a very deteriorating illness. But from that age, I had keys to the flat we lived in, and would be home in time to see my brother back from his school and get some tea ready for him. And this was, you know, as a child carer to some extent. When I went to Central Foundation School, all these boys who had grown up in the East End, and they spoke about this club, this Brady club in the East End, which I'd not heard of previously, and encouraged me to go there because I was reasonably good at sport, and particularly, I guess, football. So that was my encouragement to go to the club in the first instance. A certain element of my time was spent helping with my brother. Caring's not the right word. He didn't need care, he needed help with various things. But the fact that there was an outside interest for me to go and spend time and have, you know, time for myself was something my parents were really appreciative of. My parents, by the time we'd moved into Stepney Green, had bought the tobacconist and newsagent's kiosk in Stepney Green Station. The opening time was 5 o'clock in the morning, so it was great that my parents could get up at a more reasonable hour and leave home at 10 to 5 to get there in time for 5 o'clock to open. As I got older, I took on more responsibility, and I used to work in the shop with them when the options were available to me, and to the point where I would do a Saturday on my own, where the shop was open from 5 till 1. Lunchtime, and gradually, when my parents then had the opportunity to go on holiday, I would run it with a school friend. Normally, who would come and stay with me, and we would run the shop. I was about 15 or 16 at the time, maybe a little bit older. The main purpose of the club was to, I guess, to provide facilities for the children of the East End. It wasn't specifically the Jewish club. There were members who weren't Jewish, but the vast majority because of the demographic of the local area. And I guess it's the normal thing about keeping kids off the street, giving them something to do, really finding an outlet for them so that they would you know, have activities that they could learn from and enjoy. And for me, there was also, you know, sport was a big thing. But going to an all-boys school, it was an opportunity to get to know girls and to become less shy amongst the opposite sex. I guess it didn't take too long for me, but I guess that wasn't the same for everybody. But it was an opportunity for everybody to mix, to socialise, and to widen your general outlook. As far as the religious side of the club, I didn't find there was any strong element of any sort of orthodox religion. It was very secular. It was obvious that some of the activities were because most of the people, or the vast majority, were Jewish, but there wasn't a great deal. It wasn't as though there was a service held every day or at various times. Whatever activities were going on, there was a time limit, and then there was a meeting in the club canteen where everybody came together and were told, like a school assembly. But I don't remember any particular religious elements of the club. I guess two streams. There were the up to 16 and the over 16 to 19 age groups. Once you're a junior, you had to leave club at 9 o'clock. That was your end time. And after that, the seniors would have a dance in the hall. And it was a big thing to be able to be old enough to go to the dance. There were part of the club called the Miners, which were the younger group. There was also the friendship club for the elderly people in the area, and there were various associated groups. There was the parents group, a support group, if you like. And there were lots of managers in the club who came and gave their time freely and had particular skills. My main interest was football and other sports activities, but there was photography, there was dance classes for the girls, there was a whole range of things. You had to do a couple of activities each week. That was part of the contract, if you like, that you'd signed with the club. You know, I'd sort of flip between various things. One of them was a discussion group, which was very interesting as children, teenagers who were just beginning to mature, where you'd have an adult who would lead you in a discussion and let it take the course it took. And there's some very interesting topics came up, very interesting ideas. But you had to do your 2 activities, and that was all part and parcel of being able to go to Skeet for weekends, which was also a big thing in the club. For some children, I guess I'd include myself in that. It was an opportunity to see the countryside and experience it for the first time, and go somewhere where you would see animals in the field and, you know, lots of trees, and rather than an odd patch of debris and bomb sites, which a lot of the East End was like when I grew up. There was always something in the evening during the week, but on a Sunday it was a paid-for session with a band that was brought in, and there was a range of bands who seemed to do a circuit around all the Jewish clubs in the area. I suppose Sunday night was a good night for them. The most famous name was Jimi Hendrix, who was booked by Stephen Fishman, who was running that side of the social scene at the club. And after they were booked, they had their first hit record, which was a massive hit, and they tried to get out of the contract. In fact, I believe they offered to pay to get out of the contract, but Stephen wouldn't allow it. So we had Jimi Hendrix at the Hanbury Street at the Sunday night dance, absolutely packed, as you can imagine, because he was the name at the time. I can remember that one of the people there that wasn't a normal club member was Jet Harris, who was the guitarist in the Shadows, who were then Cliff Richard's backing group. I don't remember the concert being wonderful, to be honest. I haven't got any great memories of it. I mean, he did his tricks where he played with his teeth, I seem to remember, but it was just the atmosphere. It was absolutely packed. Among other bands, I can remember there was the Artwoods, and I saw them several times there. The thing about the Artwoods is that the leader, the eponymous Art Woods, is the older brother of Ronnie Woods, who plays for the Rolling Stones. There were also, I remember, and going back 50 odd years, so that's a long time, but I'm pretty sure there were the Bow Weevils, who later became the Kinks. They had various names. One of the regular bands there were Buster Michaels and the Daydreamers, I think they were called, who I don't think they came to anything after that. But I think with all these bands, one or two of the members then went on to play for bigger bands. They were sort of interchangeable in those days. Who else was there? I don't remember, but somebody mentioned that Screaming Lord Sutch had been there. I can't honestly say that fits my memory, but there was a whole range that did the circuit. Frankie Vaughan was a generation earlier, and Frankie Vaughan had an association with the club. Whether he'd played there, as I say, he was another generation. He was sort of pre-rock bands and that sort of thing, but certainly had an association with the club. And there are pictures I know of him at prize giving sessions on show days, that sort of thing. Most prominent memory was the first time of going to Skeet. because Skeet was what everybody spoke about. And going to Skeet that first time, probably never having been away from home without a parent or a relative, but just with a bunch of people that, almost random people that I knew from clubs, some of them I didn't, and being in this atmosphere where you were free to a certain extent to do whatever you want. You were encouraged to do whatever you want, as long as it wasn't outrageously dangerous. And it was just a completely new environment. The first thing is I met my wife at the club, and I guess that's been quite successful because we've been married 50 years. But the legacy from being at the club was able to introduce that sort of association with an organisation to my children. They joined youth clubs, although by the time they were of that age, it wasn't Brady anymore. They'd moved out of the area. But along with other friends who I'd made at the club, we would hire Skeet for a weekend, and we would take our children to Skeet, and they would experience the things that we experienced at Skeet, the freedom and the ability and the open air. And although I must say that when I first went to Skeet, it was one of the first times I'd been out in the country and seen trees and grass and animals. Hopefully my children didn't have that impression, they'd already experienced that. But it's gone through my life. There was the club, there was the marriage, there was my children, there was taking them to Skeet. It's just followed me through, and all the relationships that I built up there, of 50, 60 years standing, I'm still friendly with the same people. The East End at the time was probably quite relatively a dangerous area. It had a reputation for violence and for gangs. Obviously the craze are the ones who come into everybody's thoughts. But there was an element of violence, a lot of poverty, and being in a club, being in a group that was nothing to do with violence, nothing to do with a gang, and had an element of directing you in the proper direction, making you more aware of your surroundings, your commitment to other people, your social responsibilities. I think that fed through, and I think that was one of the huge successes of not just Brady, but of the youth club movement in general.